Hey all, so today we're going to take a look at my favorite reverb to use on drums, the SuperPlate by Soundtoys. I've been using the earlier version of this, the LittlePlate, for years, and it's great. It really helps to de-sterilize the drums after direct miking and gating. So today you're going to hear a ton of sound samples. You're going to see how this improves the sound of just your snare drum or your overall drum mix. We're going to go through all the important features on the SuperPlate plugin, and we're going to see how it is such a huge upgrade compared to the LittlePlate. Okay, so let's get started with an overview of the features. Now, the most important thing to note is that both of these, the LittlePlate and the SuperPlate, they're both an emulation of a plate reverb, right? So there's some actual physical plate reverb that it's trying to emulate. Now, the old unit, it only emulated one type of reverb, the EMT 140 it was called. The new unit, and this is one of the big upgrades that it has, is that there are 5 different types of plate reverbs, or reverbs I should say more generally, that it's trying to emulate. Now you can see they're all accessible here on the left hand side. So just running down them real quick, you got where it says the classic 140, that's the EMT 140 still. Then you got the EMT Gold Foil 240. Then you've got the Otacon Lawson Plate. Then the Echo Plate 3. And then the Stocktronics RX 4000. So those are the 5 different types of reverbs that this unit is emulating now. The next big thing to note is this guy down in here. So this is emulating different types of analog, different types of coloring that you can apply. Now, why do you have these different options? The old EMT 140, again, that's that first type of emulation here. When they first came out with that unit, it had, if I'm not mistaken, a tube preamp in it. And eventually they switched it to having a solid state preamp. And that's what these two guys down here are doing. You're either emulating the tube sound from the first round of units or the solid state colored sound from the next set of EMT 140s that they made. And of course, now if you don't want any analog coloring at all, you can switch over to this and have it off. So either tube, solid state, or clean. Let's jump over to the main settings here. So you've got this big knob right here. This is controlling the amount of reverb, or the reverb time really, that you're playing around with. It's the same as the old unit, down to a half second up to infinity, which I'm not going to be messing with today. There's also a ton of settings to help you control your workflow. There's a mix knob here for dry or wet mix. That was available on the old unit as well. So if you've got this on a drum bus, or like a parallel bus, you're probably going to always want this to be wet. But otherwise, if you have it in line on something, you're going to want to kind of fine tune this a little bit. There's also this new in and out put set of knobs here with these little LED style indicators. This is basically to probably help you with unity gain if that was something you were concerned with. You got some pre-delay, which is something that might be cool as an effect, but probably not all the time. Modulation. So the old unit had modulation. It was either on or off. The new unit, you can actually control the percentage of it. So that's kind of cool. And EQ. So you've got this low pass filter here, down to 20 hertz, up to a kilohertz, same as the old, but now you've got this high pass filter as well, down to 1 kilohertz up to 20 kilohertz. Now, we should really spend an extra minute on this, because check this out. If I click on this little tweak button here, look at that. There's a whole new section that appears. Again, you've got this little, nice little visual for what's going on with the low and high pass filters, but there's actually 2 band passes here too. Check that out, right? And I could just grab it and drag it along. And if you look further down, look, there's even more settings in here. There's a width setting and a balance, right? So there's like your stereo width and the balance for the stereo effect. Rate on the modulation, right? So instead of just like the amount that you're dealing with, the rate that the modulation is going at, and then like some different decay settings. So there's a ton of cool things that's going on here. You can really spend a lot of time exploring this. Okay, so enough talk. What we're going to do is I'm just going to actually reset this. And I'm going to basically go to what I used to have as my good and trusty settings on my snare. And we're going to basically just run through the different types of emulation and the different types of analog so you can hear how they sound. One extra little thing to note, a little piece of gripe that I do have on the new version. So before, if I right click on mix, right? Same thing on the new mix, I can see what the setting is, like what the actual value is. So that's cool, right? I can go back and make sure I have the right setting here. But on the big knob here, even though I can right click on this and get the amount of time, on the SuperPlate, I can't. It won't show me what the actual amount is. I don't know if that's a bug on their side or if it's an oversight, but it's so far it's the one and only issue I have on the new SuperPlate. All right, so let's start off on the EMT 140 with the tube style. I'm gonna start this off on just a simple little section with this on bypass, and we'll just start to cycle through everything. Okay, let's change things up a little bit. I'm going to a different set of program material. It's got some ride and China and some double bass. I've shut off the reverb that's directly on the snare, and I've put a new one on that is on my drum bus. So this is running on a parallel bus. So it's just for the reverb, and the mix on these are going to be at 100% wet. So this time when we cycle through, we'll just start off on the built-in presets available on the drums, but I've modified them so they're mixed 100%. And I'll have just the drum bus itself on so you can kind of really hear it. I've pushed this up a little bit to make it a little easier to hear. We'll cycle through that, and then I'll put it back into the full mix, and we'll cycle through it again. All right, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna go back to this tight drum plate here, and we're just gonna mess around with some of these other settings in here relative to these kind of cool EQ settings that they've got going on. Yeah, so just a couple things I'm noticing is I think the Oticon sounds like it might be maybe the most wet of them. The gold foil sounds almost lower pitched than the 140. Maybe the Stocktronics is the least wet. Maybe this is the driest sounding. So let's just check compare these two real quick for pitch wise. And now let's compare these two amount of how big the sound is. And this one sounds a little bit tighter. All right, we're gonna do one last test. I got another set of program material here. This is some tom heavy stuff, so there should be a lot more lows and mid lows going on. So we'll see how the reverb handles that. Yeah, actually, I think this the Plate 3 is probably even a tighter reverb sound than the Stocktronics, and might be a toss-up between the classic 140, the EMT 140, and the Plate 3 as far as which one has the tightest sound of the set. So hopefully that gives you guys a good taste as to how this plugin works and how you can use it to liven your drums up. I am putting out other stuff all the time. More tips on recording your drums and lessons and drum gear review, all sorts of good stuff. So if you don't want to miss out, then don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.